What if the biggest threat to your own best intentions or even the stability of a civilization isn't external forces, but a flaw in how your own mind processes reality? Civilizations drift because people drift, and people drift because of how the human mind thinks. Every decision we make follows a script: setup, complication, resolution. It's the same structure used to create every good scene in myth, novel, and courtroom drama. Contrary to common depictions, humans don't think in equations. We think in narratives. To explain, first we have setup. This is the situation as it first appears, what we observe or what we assume is appropriate. It is the frame that defines what seems possible. For example, a lazy indoor cat wakes up from an afternoon nap and immediately tries to doze off again. Then comes the complication. This is the tension that enters our motivations, fears, or the imagined consequences of nonconformity. This is where prestige, fear, or loyalty can hijack the script. So in our example, let's say the indoor cat hears a can opener being used in the kitchen. To conclude, we move on to the resolution. This is the choice we make, whether to conform, rebel, or improvise. Resolution is action, but it always carries the fingerprint of the complication that shaped it. To conclude our example, a lazy cat immediately gets up and rushes into the kitchen, meowing hopefully for tuna. The problem lives in the complication. Evidence may set the stage, but some third factor might rewrite the plot before resolution arrives. The cat, who would rather lounge, is driven to act by the hope of tuna. On a more serious note, a disaffected young man may lash out in public, not because evidence demands it, but because his narrative of blame and resentment hijacks the script. In both cases, the resolution carries the fingerprint of the complication, not the evidence. To help us understand, we have ActFoE. ActFoE means action follows evidence. It is a discipline for testing whether human decisions truly align with evidence, or whether a hidden third factor has bent the script. Just as reaction follows stimulus, action should follow evidence. If action does not follow evidence, then there is at least a third factor at work. That factor is often culture, bias, or narrative pressure. ActFoE forces us to surface that factor. It makes bicameral reasoning visible. One tract of the mind weighs evidence, the other supplies narrative tension. ActFoE asks whether the resolution followed the evidential track or whether the narrative track hijacked the outcome. Picture it. A thief sees a vulnerable passerby. The setup is opportunity. The complication is tribal loyalty. Anything for us, the law for them. The resolution is predation. A good Samaritan sees the same scene. The setup is injustice. The complication is conscience. If I do nothing, I'll regret it. So, the resolution is intervention. Same setup, different complications. From the outside, we see only the actions, the thief and the intervention. But ActFoE lets us infer the hidden beliefs shaping those choices. The concept of bicameral reasoning is not arbitrary. It is a deep structure of cognition. Thinkers across disciplines have described it in different languages. Hegel's dialectic, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, a claim, a counterclaim, and a resolution. This is the philosophical recognition of the three-step rhythm, a scientific method: hypothesis, experiment, conclusion. Observation sets the stage, testing introduces tension, and results force a resolution. Decision theory, problem definition, constraint analysis, choice optimization. First, the situation is framed, then competing pressures are weighed, and finally, a decision is made. These parallels suggest bicameral reasoning is not just a theory. It is the rhythm of human thought, whether in philosophy, science, or decision-making frameworks. We stage a scene, introduce tension, and then force a choice. The human mind simplifies information, and in doing so, often mistakes qualitative judgments for qualitative facts. We treat this feels risky as if it were, this is statistically dangerous. When that happens, solutions designed for measurable problems get doggedly applied to situations that are not measurable at all, and failure follows. This is where ActFoE matters. Bicameral reasoning is the natural rhythm of human thought, but left unchecked, it drifts. ActFoE provides the discipline. It forces us to name the complication, to surface the hidden factor that bent the script. Once you can see where narrative pressure has hijacked the process, you can re-anchor resolution in evidence. That discipline prevents drift from hardening into fracture, and fracture from collapsing into ruin. The payoff. Civilizations endure only when bicameral reasoning is disciplined at every level. Personal, cultural, institutional. Every resolution carries the fingerprint of the complication that shaped it, and those fingerprints accumulate into the character of a people. ActFoE is the safeguard, the practice of catching those fingerprints in motion before the story of civilization is hijacked by its own complication.